Hey everyone, welcome to MT Guitar and to another edition of Pink Floyd Friday. It's pretty late in the day, so you may be seeing this on Saturday or Sunday, but I just am so excited about this video that I had to get it out this week. I couldn't wait. We're going to be covering a complete breakdown of Wish You Were Here, both the song and the album. I learned some truly amazing little tidbits and stories that I'm going to share with you that I think you'll really enjoy, including the album that was never to be that they were going to do instead of Wish You Were Here, as well as the songwriting process, some fascinating tidbits about what happened in the studio. But before we do that, I told you I would give a fingerstyle lesson on Wish You Were Here, and I'm going to play a little tidbit of me playing along with my own arrangement with a tab above, and you'll see what it looks like, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to play the whole thing so you can practice along with my own fingerstyle arrangement. So here's what it looks like. Alright, so like I said, I'll play the whole arrangement at the end of the video. Please stick around for that. Now, as far as this song, this was a massively successful song of theirs, Wish You Were Here. And there's some really interesting things about this that I'm going to get to, including a famous violinist who actually played on an arrangement that was never to be released officially. But we do have a bootleg version of it, so I'll talk about that in a bit. Let's back up, though. Pink Floyd releases Dark Side in 1973. And they did a tour, and they didn't have a pressure from their record label to just churn out an album right away, which we can all consider ourselves lucky, right? Because I think Pink Floyd really shines when they have time to really be creative and to not rush things. So they had this album that they were going to make called Household Objects, believe it or not. And they were going to compose and record the album entirely with sounds that were not produced by musical instruments, which sounds truly wild, which is fitting for Pink Floyd. So they spent months and months, gathering sounds. Now, Nick Mason, in his book Inside Out, highly recommend his book, by the way, he talks about the fact that they laugh about it now because you can easily sample any sound and put it on an entire keyboard, which I've actually done for my music audio production class that I teach for beginners, where we'll record tapping at something on the table, and you can map it out on the entire keyboard and play chords with it. Back then, of course, this was not possible, so they were painstaking in their work and spent just tireless hours getting sounds recorded. Apparently, they recorded sawing wood, slamming down hammers, thudding axes into tree trunks, plucking rubber bands and then slowing the tape down so they can get some bass notes, breaking light bulbs, stroking wine glasses, unrolling adhesive tape and spraying aerosols, etc. And so the project kind of fizzled. I think they sort of spun their wheels on it and realized that with all the work that would need to be done, it just wasn't worth it. So Roger Waters starts writing Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which I think is probably one of the greatest songs of all time, surely one of the greatest Pink Floyd songs of all time, if not the best. And this was clearly about Syd, which we're going to talk about more. But let's talk about the concept of this album. This album was really about absence, Wish You Were Here. And actually, funny enough, this was a remnant from Household Objects because they had been pouring water into wine glasses and running their fingers on the rim, around the rim, which is something you can do to create a pitch. And so with different levels of water, they had created a chord that was basically the beginning of Shine On. So, all right, so let's fast forward to Wish You Were Here, the song. The famous jazz violinist Stefan Grappelli, who famously recorded extensively with Django Reinhardt, who is a jazz god for jazz guitarists, famous for being, the king of gypsy jazz, basically was recording, Stefan Grappelli was recording in Abbey Road at the same time. And so they all had this idea, especially Gilmour, that we should have Grappelli play violin on Wish You Were Here, because they kind of heard that sound. So they actually recorded a version with Grappelli. I'm going to leave a link in the description below, and you can check it out. Highly recommend checking it out. It's pretty wild. Stefan Grappelli, one of the greatest jazz violinists of all time, playing the solos on Wish You Were Here. They didn't end up using it, and I think you'll see why if you listen to it, because Pink Floyd is so unique in their sound and in their vibe, and I think Grappelli wasn't really catching on to it, and so it just didn't sync up, and it really needed that Gilmour touch, I think, for those solos. Now, let's talk about the actual studio sessions a little bit, all right? 5th of June was a very memorable day in Abbey Road Studios, 1975. Mason remembers in his book that he entered the control room and there was an overweight bald man, all right, in the studio that he didn't recognize. So Gilmour asks him, "Do you know who that is?" And Mason says no, and he says, "Well, that's Syd." So Mason says he was horrified by this change in Syd because he looked so different, and he was also acting very different than he remembered. So keep in mind that Nick Mason hadn't really seen Syd Barrett since 1968. David Gilmour especially helped Syd with his solo works in 1970 with the Madcap Laughs and Barrett, and Roger Waters did a little bit of help, but mainly Gilmour. So Gilmour sort of knew that was Syd because he had seen him in his decline. And so it was quite a shock for the band, and I think it was a sad thing for them because they all felt sort of connected with Syd, and this album and this song, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, is specifically about Syd. Now, I think that this occurrence actually emboldened the band to really dig their heels into this concept of Wish You Were Here and Shine On You Crazy Diamond being the beginning and end of the album. For instance, Richard Wright played See Emily Play at the very end of Shine On, okay, parts 6 through 9. He plays the melody, dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee, just so hauntingly beautiful, right? Really, I mean, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. Now, let's talk about Wish You Were Here, okay, the song Wish You Were Here. Such a classic. It's the 4th song on the album. Personally, it has so much emotional significance to me because it was the first song I learned on guitar. And, I had been such a big Floyd fan before I even touched a guitar. I had had a lot of Gilmour's solos memorized in my ear to the point where I could have sung them and without even touching a guitar. So I learned the intro and the chords to Wish You Were Here. Okay, now speaking of the songwriting process, we know that this song is about Syd Barrett, okay? Everyone knows that. It's partly about Syd Barrett. A lead role in a cage, right? I think is a good indication. But there's more going on there than just Syd. Roger claims that he actually wrote it about the two parts of himself, one light, one dark, one good, one bad, and one that's sort of a good person, one that's selfish, etc. So that's kind of where that contrast comes from when he talks about heaven from hell, blue skies from pain. Okay. Now, Roger was also talking about the pressures of fame and the record label and the sort of isolation that occurs. He sort of wishes that the band was there because they felt a little bit taken aback by fame, and they were used to playing these intimate audiences, right, in the 60s, and all of a sudden they're playing big stadiums. And the record label didn't really care about how creative or brilliant Pink Floyd was as long as they sold records. So all these things were weighing on Roger when he was writing this song. Now, Roger actually admitted in the late 70s that this is partially a love song, which is kind of a surprise to me. I didn't realize that. But he said that he didn't write traditional love songs, but when he did, there were sort of hidden meanings in there. So that's an interesting thing. Now, the intro of this has some radio stuff going on, right? Somebody turning the dial of a radio. Now, I always had this theory, and I don't have evidence. I've been researching, but I don't see any interviews where Pink Floyd talks about this specific thing. But I always thought that the radio thing, where somebody's turning the dial and then they stumble upon the 12-string guitar intro of Wish You Were Here. I thought that that was supposed to portray Syd being somewhere else, turning a radio dial and hearing his old friends, his old band, and then picking up a guitar, clearing his throat, and playing the solo. So that was me as a high schooler, just sort of, thinking about these creative things. And I don't have any evidence to support that. But that's a little fun little thing that I thought about. But they have this radio going, and then the song starts with the 12-string guitar. Do, 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 do. And they actually took out the low end and the high end to produce that sound, that radio sound on the guitar itself. And then Gilmour plays a clean acoustic solo on that. Now, Gilmour actually says he wished that he could have re-recorded that because he thought he could have played it a little better, which is interesting. I mean, I love that solo, but I understand as a musician, sometimes you feel like I could have done that a little better. Now, I love Rick Wright's piano fills. I mean, he just has some beautiful piano fills throughout this song. And, Richard Wright is so underrated. I mean, people sort of overlook how brilliant he was. He wrote a lot of the chords, a lot of the voicings, and many of the fills. And he was jazz trained, so he really knew a lot. And his talents really shine on this song. He also plays a mini moog, and you can hear that. It's a sort of the synthesizers sounds in the background. At the end of the song, there's a wind noise that comes in, and as the song sort of fades out. So let's watch my solo arrangement with the tab ahead, and I highly recommend you check this out. Before we do that, though, I do want to point out some things about it before we watch it. As you're playing a fingerstyle song, this is something I love doing, but it's hard to teach. You really want to make sure the melody is louder than the chords. So when I start the lesson, I'm playing the chord, but it's quiet. So I'm going melody, okay? That's the melody. But the chords are still there, but they're just quieter. So it's like... right? And then... Now, the other thing to point out is if I go Heaven from Hell, right? And then I go to A minor, I don't want to strum the first string again because that's the word hell. So I don't want to go because now the melody is gone. So I'm going to strum only the bass notes. So you're going to see sort of some weird things on my tab where you see just a bunch of bass notes as the melody's ringing out. And that's because I wanted the melody to be undisturbed. The chords are beneath it, not at the same level, at the same pitch. So out of the way. Even over this G, here's the melody on the second string. I'm just going to strum the first few bass strings. Okay, so keep that in mind as you try to learn this. Let me know how it goes. Let me know if this works for you with the tab above. Please check out the Patreon where I do have it written out. And, I'm making the Pink Floyd Friday available at the $2 a month level, which is insane. Okay, I mean, the deal is pretty outrageous. But I want to make it affordable and available. Check that out. It's a great way to support the channel. And enjoy. See you next time. Bye. you.